So, so Tammy, just explain, this is a day in the life of what you're doing at Lake City Living.
Absolutely. Well, every day is different. I'm definitely put on a lot of different hats every day. You never know what I'm going to be. But typically, I get up, make sure that I am responding to all my emails. I have a lot of text messages that come through first thing in the morning because people are getting into work and they're finding things and they're like, "Hey, what's going on here? What's going on there? Can we jump on a call?" So lots of communication happening very early in the morning. And so that's kind of nice though, because it gets us started for our day. Typically we'll have a huddle where we'll go on and go around with everybody and we'll talk about, what their top three are for the day, what kind of stocks they have. And then of course, we'll individually get with people once they have stocks and different things that they need to work through. There's some days where I'm on site and I'm walking units and I am helping do cost sheets, or I am giving ideas about landscape, or telling people what they need to do because maybe they haven't done it. And then there's other days where I am doing an admin day and I am filling out all the voter spreadsheets or helping with the executive summaries or going through new leases and making sure that we're following the policies and procedures with the audits, and that all the leases are correct and they're getting the right identifications and approving things. And then there's some days where I'm doing training. So we might have a new associate, or there's something that our teams are stuck on and they are needing some additional help. So we'll do group training or we'll do some one-on-one training. So I do a lot of trainings with people, teaching them how to use certain softwares or be creative with their marketing or how to use social media. So there's a lot of that happening. And then I have a lot of communication with ownership. So, just fighting fires, doing inspections, communication with the ownership group, making sure that we're doing, everything that we need to do, cost savings, working with vendors, making sure that we're getting the best deals with the vendors, making sure we have the right vendors that are giving us the best deals. And then, of course, I have my leadership team, the regional manager and the regional maintenance manager, and I do daily calls with them, making sure everything is good to go. If they need anything from me, if they have to run anything by me, if they have any bids or anything like that that needs to get done. So there's a lot. Every day, I would say that my life is very different, but I love it and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Love it. All right. So, and I'm gonna get. I know I sent you over. So Tammy's our superstar operations leader, and I didn't give a great introduction because we went right into it because I was just trying to add a person, as this is going to be a new feature, to StreamYard, to see how this would go. So this was a test, and we just jumped right into it. So she's our
We did.
superstar, and,
Me
and I was
first.
like, Tammy, you need Chrome, and I'm like, oh, so there was some stuff behind the scenes that that happens, and but we'll go off topic a little bit. I know I sent her ahead of time some questions, but really, what does it take? I mean, a lot of investors invest in real estate, primarily in multifamily real estate, and they don't see what happens behind the scenes. They put up money, they expect things to be done, and they expect these returns to happen, but what I'm really asking you, Tammy, is we take over a property. What happens next? And I know this just came from my brain, and I apologize. It's we just closed the property, so
We did.
woohoo!
Fresh in my
Yes,
brain. It's fresh in my
yes. Oh,
brain.
I'm
We're in
sure
the
it
middle
is
of it
because
right
that was
now.
last Thursday.
Yep.
And then what happened? Like what happens behind the scenes? Because a lot of people think, oh, you close, it's all you hand it off to the property management company, it's all done. So what really happens?
No, we're just getting started. It's just the
Yeah.
beginning. There's a lot that happens. First things first, you sit there basically all day with the other people, and you grab as much information as you possibly can from those people who've been there and been working in the trenches and know everything that's going on with those individual apartments, the property itself. So you really try to get as much info as you possibly can, and a lot of the times they're very forthcoming with it, so it's really great to be able to have that little bit of time. And then we put letters on every door, hand deliver letters to every door saying that we're the new management company, we're taking over, here's our information if you need anything. And then the floodgates open. They all start coming in because they want to know who's managing their life now. They want to know who we are, what we're going to do. If they didn't have something fixed, they're going to let us know about it. And so a lot of work orders come in. A lot of complaints come in because they felt like they haven't been heard, or maybe they were heard and they just chose not to take care of it. So there's a lot of that, but it's kind of good for us because now we get to be the winners. We get to fix the thing. We get to have some empathy for them. We're new. We get to start fresh and prove to them that what we're doing at Lake City Living is we want to take care of them. We want to provide excellent customer service for them. And then we are walking all the vacant units, making lists of supplies that we need. We're checking that DQ to make sure that everything's good. For this particular one, we had some evictions carry over. So we've got court next week on 2 of them that we've got to go to. We've got to set up our whole entire system through Entrata, and that takes quite a few days. We've got to transfer over the Facebook, all the social media. We've got to build a website. We've got to make sure that all the data is entered correctly. And if we don't get data, then we've got to do resident information update sheets that we send out to the residents, and we ask them to fill it out so we can get all the data in correctly. And so we have to manually go in and put that in. We have to turn on all of the electricity, water, sewer, everything, every vendor that we would use, from utilities to paint to everything. We've got to get them all set up in our system under our vendor credentials. We've got to get everything turned over into the new ownership name. You've got to train the new on-site employees. You've got to get them their career apparel. You got to make sure that everything is ready to go. So when you are ready for that leasing team to start doing some leasing, then you're ready. Doors are open. People are touring. You are doing paper applications. You're doing situations where, you're writing things down on a notepad because your systems aren't up. So there is definitely a lot behind the scenes, but it's very rewarding to see where you start to where you finish.
Yes, and that's why it's a lot different from the investor's point of view. A lot of times it just you close and then you hand it over and you just think things happen, but there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. As you can see, it's literally you're taking over. Each property is its own business with its own CEO, with its own people that they have to report to, and there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. So now we can go back to the actual questions that I sent over. I only sent them over last night to give Tami unlimited amount of time to review them. But how does your team ensure resident satisfaction while also balancing owner or investor expectations?
Yeah. So, I think it starts from the initial meet and greet. So standing, greeting, and smiling for everyone who enters the door. It doesn't matter if they're a future resident, a prospect, a vendor, somebody who is a family member coming in, just standing and greeting and smiling. Doing some unique follow-up, make sure you're active listening, finding solutions when people bring you problems, creating a safe space, and then over communicating and having empathy for people.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so like what, I'm going to kind of change this question a little bit, but I won't. I'll make it cleaner for you. So what strategies or tech do you rely on to keep operations efficient and scalable across multiple properties?
Yeah. So one of the reasons that we chose Entrata as our kind of software for our, business is that it's a one-stop shop. Everything is in Entrata. And so we have certain things that help us drive our leads, that we can reply back to people. We can call people through it, and then also once they get to the resident part, then you manage the resident part, and then you manage them when they move out. And then you manage your turns and your make readies and all of the work orders and everything in this one-stop shop. So I feel like that's definitely the major area that helps us keep strategic and organized. And then of course, utilizing your social media, making sure ILSs are looking good and fresh with new pictures, rebates with your vendors. So creating relationships and making sure that you're getting the best deal with, your vendors and for your company, and anything that is streamlined across the portfolio, making sure that you're getting some sort of deal for being able to do, multiple properties and different things of that sort with it when it comes to having those vendor relationships.
Yes. All right. So what lights you, now I'm really going off topic, but what lights you up? Like Tami has this magic smile that is very contagious, but what really lights you up with Lake City Living? Like what's a win for you that can get you through the day and keep you positively motivated?
So my favorite saying is to every property that I have, a lease a day keeps Tami away, because I know if we're getting a lease a day, we're going to stay occupied and we're going to stay where we need to stay. But honestly, what really lights me up is knowing that the people that we have on site are happy and excited about coming to work every day and taking care of their residents. I am very, very big on, we create a lifestyle for people. We are their livelihood. We take care of them, and customer service is number one. And if I know that I get a 5-star review, or I am on the property and someone comes up to me and they're like, man, this person is wonderful. That hits home for me. That makes me feel like, wow, we're doing a good job. That's definitely my favorite part.
Well, that's awesome. And then it lights
Yeah.
me up. I love it. Honestly, what lights me up is when you're talking about the properties and whether it's an increase in occupancy, but I can see in your excitement and it just, that motivation spreads. And if it spreads to me, it spreads through the team. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I mean, if there was a camera in my kitchen at my home, you would know that every night I check to see how many leases we got for the day, and then I do a little dance, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, we got 7 leases today." So it's just the small things, and my family's looking at me like, "You're such a creep, Tammy." I'm like, "I know, it's just exciting."
all right, so let's go to the next one then. Can you share a recent challenge? I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but your team faced and how you overcame it or how you are going to overcome it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one in particular has been just a huge focus for us as, a group with the executive team and then trickling down on site. And we had to get everybody bought in, but it was cutting back on cost across the board. A lot of us come from a world where more is better. And a lot of that is third party, and they do get certain benefits from having more. And they utilize it. And so when you're doing owner managed, clearly you want to go with less because you don't need all that extra. But when you take a deep dive into the financials quarterly and you drop things that you don't need, you really start to understand that you can live without it. You can still be successful. You might have to be a little bit more creative and you might have to do a little bit more work, but you can still make it happen. So one of the successes is that, for us as Lake City Living, we have year over year for the month of April dropped our expenses 24%. And we
Woohoo!
also added in 3 additional new properties. So it's definitely more than a 24%, but if you add in the 3 new properties, we added in new expenses. So, but because it didn't show last year, April for Vieira, Deerwood, and Maverick, they're not in there. So it's a huge win. It's a huge win.
And I agree. And that is, why we're doing Lake City Living with Lake City Equity and combine the two is really it's one team and the goal is to give back not just to the residents, but to give back to the investors. And so let's move on with that. And really you guys are headed to NAA and you're probably going to learn a lot, but what are your I'm totally going off topic. I know
You
that.
did.
And Tammy's used to me and she's used to my brain on how it works. So even though I sent her the script of questions, I had a feeling that I would read them and I'd be like, well, we'll change it a little bit. But
No worries.
why go to these meetings? Like, why is it so important? And what value, and this goes, with that question, what value can you bring to others there and can they bring to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the National Apartment Association Apartmentalize is done yearly and it's done, in a different, state every year. And it's the biggest convention that there is. And really what you take from it is number one, the networking, being able to meet with your big companies like Entrada. I have a lunch with them to talk about, our job costing and, to talk about what's new and what do they see coming for the future for Entrada that's going to make, our lives easier. Are we going to have some really cool AI things coming up? So being able to have those conversations and create that rapport with your vendors and other companies and then learning. You learn a lot in these sessions that they have because it's so many different walks of life. Like for us, we're in the Sun Belt. And so like you have people coming from Oregon or Washington or, Indiana or California or Europe, overseas. I mean, people from overseas come too. And so you have all these different speakers who are talking about different things that they're doing. And it's just really nice. Like we all may be doing, some things very similar, but it's nice to hear like, oh, wow, fake plants are becoming a thing because nobody waters their plants. Like, I mean, there's been a point where I actually was taking bonuses away from people for not watering their plants because we were spending so much in landscape every month redoing the plants. Well, now fake plants are becoming a thing. And I'm like, I can get on board with fake plants because you can make fake plant pots look amazing and then you don't ever have to change them again. So you learn little things like that. And it's just like something that could be trending on the West Coast that's not made it to the East Coast yet with, a new AI technology or a new way of doing things or, a new way of saving money. And you kind of pick up on those things or you hear about those things. And then also you meet people unexpectedly at these events that really can help you make your business so much better. And then of course you get continued education and you get to have fun, but it's also a lot of work. And it's nice to come back and say, you feel really energized afterwards, of course, because you're being pumped up all week about all the fun things and exciting. Then you come back and you like are ready to just tell everybody about it. And it's just really fun to see some of those things that you bring home from it come to fruition.
Love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I always get excited when I go to meetings and same kind of thing, whether it's a dentistry meeting or when I go to NMHC and I meet other people, other operators, and other property management companies, other lenders. Like you get pumped up and you feel that energy, and then you bring it forward to the whole team. So I love it. So
Yes.
with that being said, I'm going to go back to this one, but how do you, approach preventative maintenance and truly the long-term asset preservation for your properties?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, it's vital to do quarterly preventative maintenance. And, some of the properties that we bought, I think we're not having that done. But it is vital to do it. And the reason is that number one, it cuts down on work orders, it cuts down on cost, it helps you get ahead of if you're going to have some major, issues with HVACs, or that, oh man, this one's on its last leg. We're probably going to get the rest of this year out of it. Let me put this down in my budget but notebook that we're probably going to have to replace this. So it gives you a little bit of an idea to kind of, you know, work out your future. And then of course you can go through and make sure, like, what kind of carpet they have, what kind of appliances they have. So we have a PM log that we have them fill out. And then also I like for my teams to review their reoccurring work orders monthly. Typically if somebody is putting a work order in more than once, there's a bigger issue at hand, especially with plumbing. So like my toilet's running. Okay, well I went and fixed it, last week, and then it got put in this week, and then it got put in again. Okay, there's a bigger problem. Something's more in depth, and we need to get into that in depth area of that work order in order to figure out before we have a bigger problem. So definitely reviewing that, doing the daily huddles with the teams, making sure that we're saying, is there any, fire, flood, or blood? Fire, flood, or blood, anything going on, anything like that we need to be looped in on, and not waiting, until you have a next phone call with them. We're talking about it daily. We just implemented the work order Wednesday call, which is really nice because we go through work orders. We make sure that there's nothing major that needs to be taken care of. And then of course, if there is, then we address it and bubble it up to ownership. We get bids. And then doing the Make Ready Monday calls and our one-on-one biweeklies with our community managers and our service managers. And then just really over communicating with your residents, with your property manager, with me, with the regionals, and with ownership. Over communicating, like, hey, this is happening. It's happening. We may not want it
Love
to,
it.
but it's happening.
Love it. And you used to work for a third-party property management company.
I
So
did.
what sets us different, with Lake City Living as opposed to that? And I think you went into some of it, but what is really, do you see as the difference between the two?
Yeah, so the number one, hands down, that I can say is you have control of your financials. A lot of the times when you go with a third party property management company, they are already signed up with all kinds of things. And if because I've read a lot of third party property management contracts before, if you read the contract in depth, and a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't, it says in there that they're going to sign you up for all that stuff, and you're going to pay for it because it's part of their contract. So you don't really have control of your financials, and you may be okay with that as an owner. But what I've learned is that a lot of owners didn't read that, and they didn't know they had to pay that. And then it becomes a power struggle, because it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Well, you signed a 3-year contract, so we're going to do it. And then now as an owner, you're out that money because you did. And a lot of the times they're pretty airtight. You're not getting out of them unless there's something major going on. And so that would 100% be hands down. I did have because I would create relationships with my ownership groups. And a lot of the times I worked directly with certain ownership groups for years, even though I was with third party. But I would work with those particular people. I worked with one owner for 10 years. And so, every time we would review the financials, I would be like, well, this, and well, I don't want to pay for that. I'm like, well, you signed up, you have to pay for it. I don't know, and he's like, well, I'm going to call the owner. Okay. Well, and then he got off the call and he's like, well, I can't do anything about it, and I felt bad because I didn't feel like that was right, but also he should have read the contract. But at the same time, he didn't need all those things. He was spending probably an average of $3,200 a month across his portfolio on things he really didn't need, but because it benefited the third party property management company, he was going to have to pay for it. So that's a huge win for owner managed. And then I think number 2 is culture. You get to create the culture you want. When you get into the big property management companies, Gray Stars, Pegasus, Bell, all of those, they've have a foundation, and it's gotten so corporate that this is the culture and this is what we're going to do, and there's no wiggle room. With owner managed, it's like you find what works for you, and then you can improve it, and you can change it, and you can make little tweaks to make it better, and you can also listen to your people a little bit more about their feedback and how they feel about it. And that's super nice because it gets lost in transition when you are working third party. And then I think you can also really understand that everybody is human. And you can create exceptional customer service. You can have highly empowered teams, and you can brand your company to be as unique as you want it.
So talking about I mean, that was a great freaking answer.
Oh,
So talking
thanks.
about personalities, is how do you manage all these different personalities in these different locations and with these different classes of assets?
So I think it really depends like on the person. You have to know your people. Like you really have to know them. When you put a property manager in place to run a multi-million dollar asset, like you have to trust them. You have to know them. You have to know how they work, and every one of them are different. I can talk to one person this way and deliver it, and I can talk to one person this way and deliver it, and both of them did not hear the same thing that I heard, or that one heard. So you have to figure out, with fun little games and fun little tests and little questions that you can ask them, when you're on your one-on-ones and your huddles, to try to figure out what type of personality they have. And then once you do that, you treat them the way that they want to be treated. Because if you try to treat everybody the same, you're going to lose full control. They're not going to respond. They're not going to be receptive. They're going to say that they didn't hear that, and that's not what they heard. And then you need to follow up, hold people accountable, inspect what you inspect, and celebrate their wins. And I think that you can really get a lot of people bought in by that.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. And now I'm skipping around, but if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who owns properties that's using third-party property management that wants to manage their own portfolio, what would that be?
Well, I think that the number one thing I would say is that you make sure you fully understand the property. Make sure that you review the work orders, you review the Google reviews, you know what you're getting yourself into before you purchase it. Now, if you already own it, clearly you probably know that. And then you want to understand that we manage people's lives. And sometimes it is a money thing, but it's not just for the money. And so you really have to have people who are empathetic and on site, that really understand and know how to talk to people and know how to put fires out and know how to be compassionate. And then you would need to make sure that you have the logistics down of start to finish. This is where we're going to start, and this is where we're going to finish in a year. And these are, and you set goals. And one of the things that we do is our quarterly goals, and it keeps us on track, and it makes sure that we're holding ourselves accountable. And then you always need to be preparing for things to happen. That's why we do the preventative maintenance. That's why we look at our recurring work orders. You have to be extremely invested. It's not like you can go and buy a property, start a management company, and walk away. You can't. It's a very, you can if you have somebody that you really trust to do it, but you also, as the owner, need to be involved in order to be able to have a say in what's happening. Because I think that you and I both know, Iggy, that you can hand it off to somebody and they can tear it down in 90 days, or you can hand it off to somebody and they can build it up in 90 days. So you have to really make sure that you're checking those balances. And if I were to go out and purchase a property, I'm going to be very involved, even if I may not be the one that wants to actually run it, or be the management team or whatever, but I'm going to be looking at things. I'm going to be digging in. I'm going to be making sure, but I also do this every day. So that would just be my
Yes.
recommendation, is to definitely over communicate, understand people are human, and dig in, and don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what your management team's there for. They need to have the answers.
I think one of the great things that you did and that wouldn't happen with third party property management is Sullivan Station, Somerville Station.
Combining
You're
properties
like
now.
looking at me like I'm crazy. So yeah, Somerville Station that we just closed is, if you had third party, we would have closed. There would have been a communication gap where we don't talk really for 2 weeks, and we wouldn't know, we're in the dark. And I think one of the things is, the day of closing, you were on site. Or was
Absolutely.
it the day before? And the day of closing, you were on site, and the day before, you were doing inspections. That's the power I really see of, having your own management company, is you're constantly involved and you're constantly getting feedback. one of the positives or negatives from the ownership side is we know when there's a problem pretty much right away, as opposed to a week or 2 weeks later. So, you're from our side, we're getting that information very, very quickly, so we can act very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, there's not
and
I don't want to send all those things to you guys, but I have to because
oh,
you need
right.
to know. Like, I don't want to sit on something and say, oh, well, that happened 2 weeks ago, but I didn't want to tell you. No, I'm going to tell you right then and there because we've got to figure out how we're going to fix it. We got to prepare for it. And, we got to be proactive.
Yes. Well, let's get to this hard question. What adjustments or innovations have you implemented in because of underperformance in certain assets?
Yeah, of course. So I definitely think that creating an outreach marketing plan, utilizing your social media and making sure that you're posting daily, refreshing, renewing, really leaning into your preferred employer programs, setting up mini models, taking videos, resident referrals, reducing some rents depending on the market, and also some specials, making sure that you're shopping your comps, your team knows what they're offering, what they're up against, have them secret shop them, and then just really have daily a cadence. Follow up daily. Hey, how was the day? Tell me what happened. How many leases did we get? How many tours did we have? Did anything crazy happen? Did we not have anybody come in? What are we going to do tomorrow to get tours? Just over communication in general.
Yeah, and I think that that's huge. And this is from an investor's point of view. This is where it's really, really important. We base our distributions on the information that's coming in from Tami. So if we see assets that are underperforming and we're doing everything possible, we really look at the numbers to discuss where the distributions can be, if we can increase them, and unfortunately, some cases to protect our asset, because that's asset protection or is one of the most important things, and we want,
Absolutely.
talking about preventative maintenance. Yeah, we don't have to do that, but if we don't do it, it's going to be a bigger price tag at the end. We're going to lose residents in the future, and it's going to be harder to not only sell it but to just operate it in the future. So we'd rather spend it now, and if that means that we have to pull back on some distributions for the present being, but we would be able to possibly increase them in the future, but in actually increase the asset's value in the future, then it's totally worth it. So we
Very
appreciate
correct.
everything you're doing. Well, I'm glad we agree on that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
now this is a really tough topic, and Tami and I, we get into discussions. The whole team, we call us they call us the big three, John, Sam, and I. But it's really, and this is another tough question, but how do you manage investor or ownership communication when a property isn't performing as planned?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to over communicating. Start talking about it 90 days in advance, watching your trends, sharing your suggestions, doing some market research, working closely with your vendors to deliver a great product. You may have to do some on-site training with your teams, but I think the biggest thing is being honest. I tell you guys all the time. I mean, that's our number one core value, honesty. I'm honest as it comes. Sometimes not everybody wants to hear what I have to say, but I want to tell you the truth because I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. And I know that that's hard for people sometimes, but I feel like if I don't tell you the truth and I don't tell you how bad it is or where we are or what's happening, it's just going to come back to haunt me later. So ripping the band-aid off, over communicating, and really getting into the details of what's happening, and then going there myself and figuring it out and making sure that while I'm there, I'm updating all day. Hey, saw this. This is going on. This is what's happening. And that's, I worked with, a company for 10 years and I was a regional manager. And, that's one step kind of below my role now as a vice president. I saw my vice president twice, like outside of just, like regular meetings in Atlanta or, little conferences we go to, but on site twice in 10 years. So
Yeah,
that's just a part of the culture that we want to create in Lake City is that my title is nothing and my presence is everything.
I love that.
Yep.
And I mean, we'll end with this one. Um, I mean, and I'm sure you thought we got a lot of turnaround stories, but
Yeah.
even one that's still in progress, that really shows your team's ability to adapt and problem solve and just make things great.
Yeah. So I picked Timberland and Abercorn. I think that it's probably going to be my greatest love story when it comes to property management because I mean, I was scared. and I'm not usually scared. But when I got there last January, the DQ was well over 200K for both the properties combined.
DQ
Um,
for everybody. Can you just explain what DQ is for? I think almost
Delinquency.
everyone knows. Yes. It's
Yeah.
for people that aren't paying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the people who are not paying was well over 200K. We started walking the units to kind of figure out why are so many people not paying. Well, we had 78 notice of vacates in a drawer that had not been submitted, and that was my very first call to ownership. That was hard. And I think that everybody was mind blown, but it was the truth, and we had to fix it right then and there. And so that meant getting them ready, getting them turned. I mean, there was so much stuff in these units, like getting them trashed out, and then taking on 78 units out of 326 to get ready, on top of maybe 15 that we already had in the process. And then getting them ready and getting them, of course, marketed and moved into. We've filed evictions on over 70% of this property. We've probably turned close to 82% of it in 1 year. And so this is the results within a year. So DQ end of quarter 1 was at 5.24%, or 28K between both properties. Occupancy is at an average of 92.5% as of today.
Woohoo!
Yep. They only have 14 vacant units in the process of being ready. Income is up by 9.88% year over year. Rubs are up by 469%. I think last year at this time
That's
we were around
huge.
$2,000 that we had made, and now we're at like 48. So definitely collecting that money on them rubs.
Can you just explain
And
to everyone? I know that I'm stopping
yeah, you're
your.
good.
I didn't want to, but what is rubs to people? Not what it
Rubs
stands for, but what is it?
Rubs are our utility reimbursement. So we
Okay.
charge back for water, sewer, trash, pest control, all of those things, and those are considered your rubs.
Okay.
So we were charging for over 300 units around 20, I think it was $2,300 last year, first quarter, and this quarter we're like 48,000. So we're up by 469%.
Nice.
Yeah. And then other income is up by 65%. Other income is, any of your application fees, admin fees, risk fees, pet rent, anything that you charge for damages. So really increased it. 65% is a huge year over year jump on other income. And the best one is vacancy losses down by 55%, clearly because we don't have 78 units. And our NOI is up by 80%.
Yeah,
So
that I
I would
mean
call
the
that a
whole
success.
thing.
A very
Yes,
successful year. It was a lot of work
yes.
and it was hard. It's definitely in 24 years the hardest property I've ever touched. But I mean, we're sitting here looking at it now going, wow, we don't know how we did that, but we did it. But we did it because we were in the trenches taking the grenades with the team. And that's what helped them get to where they are today. And it's moving and grooving and we're only going up. So I love that
I
story.
agree.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean that was a perfect story and a perfect ending to this. We'll just call it. It's almost like a podcast. I
It
have this
is.
set up.
I
Yeah,
love it.
and I mean this was wonderful. We'll see how this is taken by everybody, but you guys should really digest this because it's Tammy's taking away her time to join us, so it can give you better. Understanding on what happens at the property level. It's not just about distributions. It's not just about making money. It's really people. We're taking care of people's homes, and not just their homes, their residents, but everybody that works on the team, in the team, with the team. It's
Yep.
like it's a huge family, and we have to remember that when we're looking. When we just get our distributions and we just or get these fantastic returns. There's tons of stuff that's happening behind the scenes.
So much
So,
every
any
day.
last words, Tammy, that you want to share,
No.
or did? All
Well, I
right,
mean,
perfect.
I'm super excited. We're trending as a portfolio to 96% in the next 30 days. So
Woo!
like holla. I know. I love that for us. And just every day we're just getting more and more leases, which is fantastic, which means that the product's looking good. Curb appeal's looking good. We've got the right people in the right seats. We've got, little leasing machines. We're getting our make readies done. We're keeping residents with renewal retention and they're staying because they like what they're seeing. And we're, like I said, we're just going up from here. We're going to grow.
Top
Somerville Station is
secret.
going to be a great success. We've really got a great manager in there. I'm actually going to see them in just a few minutes. So spending the afternoon with
Woo!
them. Yeah, we're going to take some videos and do some fun tours and all that stuff so we can start our social media campaign to get those units leased. And just the biggest thing is if I help and Iggy and Sam and John and Katie and JD help take care of our people are going to help take care of those people, and then they're going to take care of us because they're going to pay their rent on time.
There you go.
And
We'll
that's what
end
we
at
want.
that. Awesome.